Hey guys, Tim with Defense Mechanisms here. I want to take a couple minutes today to talk about optic mount heights, if it matters or not, if you should be concerned about it or not, and some considerations for offset with these really tall mounts. So I'm sure you guys have noticed that the trend in our industry is taller and taller optic mounts. With this year, in the last year or so, the GBRS group, the Hydra, the 2.91, their Lerna mount, these are very tall optic mounts, and we're starting to see these across the board. We get questions, from students and from you guys on social media, like, why would you choose such a tall mount? Or when we show pictures of our rifle setups, there's constantly comments about like how tall, oh, that mount is super tall. So let's talk about why our mounts are tall. The kind of first reason our mounts are tall is because we are not building these guns for shooting at the range, right? If I was building a gun just to shoot at the range, if my training rifle was for carbine class at the range only, it would be different. I would use a lower third or 193 witness optic height, right? For me, 193 is probably the right answer. I'm a little taller, a little bigger guy. But if I'm just shooting with the rifle at the range, I want as much contact with the rifle as I get. Right now, my eye is in the iron sight on this Unity fast mount, and so that's about a 1.4. And so I want as much contact with the rifle as I can get if my primary function with the rifle is about shooting it a lot at the range. But what you'll see is a lot of guys now are spending more time training CQB tactics, and it's not just about take the rifle and go shoot a hole in paper. It has a lot to do with moving around, interacting with your environment, being able to see and PID targets, not just shoot every target in front of you, not just up drills, but to actually do PID. And what I find for me is that the more heads up stance I can have as I move around my environment, the easier it is for me to see. And so the taller my optics mount is, it keeps me from having to do the old crouch down, right? And so if I'm walking around all tall and I have a low mount, I'm gonna go into the iron sights here. If I'm walking around all tall and I have to get into that low mount, it really changes my posture and my ability to see the world as I crunch down into this weapon. But if I have a tall mount, this is a 226 plus a duty RDS, so it's a little taller than normal. So this is like a 275. And with this, I only have to lower my head. If I don't lower my head at all when I bring the rifle up, I'm looking just above. I have to lower my head a little bit, which actually makes me think I might need one of those super tall GBRS mounts. But if the rifle's just for the range, those lower mounts are fine. But if it's about, if you actually are, having to use this rifle for work, or for myself in CQB environment type trainings where I want to be able to work around it, I want to be able to move comfortably, naturally, so I can breathe, so I can see. Heads up position lets me do all of that better. And then I want an optic setup so that I can just bring it up into my heads up position versus having to change my posture when it's time to shoot. So that's the big reason that we're into tall mounts. The other thing is these tall mounts work better if you're using a pro mask, gas mask, or if you're using night vision for passive aiming. It's a lot easier to get behind the gun with the mask. The mask interferes with your cheek weld, and so it's easier if the optic is taller. It gives you a little more room to play with, and you're not fighting to get down into that with this mask on your cheek. The same thing with night vision. You have this tube in front of your eye. It's a lot easier to line those up higher versus trying to get down low and line them up. It changes the angle. And so for sure, if you're setting up a rifle for use with night vision or for regular use in a pro mask, you should go with the tall mount. Kind of the starting point for tall mounts, in my opinion, is the Unity Fast, the 226 system, and that's what I used in the past. My previous rifle has a 226 mount with a Comp M5 on it, so it's got a 2.26 optical centerline, like height over bore, or over the rail. Over bore, a 226 is actually 3.6 inches from center of optic to center of the bore. Whereas this Duty RDS, I didn't get Unity makes a mount for Duty RDS to put it at 226. I wanted to try it taller, so for me this mount's 395 over the bore. And so that difference is 0.35 inches. And so what I have found is I have not had to adjust my offset very much, even though my optic is 0.35 inches higher. The difference in my groups is negligible. They moved down a little bit, and I'm trying in my training to spend more time in this optic to just raise that dot up a little bit. But we're talking about the difference of a bullet and a half in diameter, right? And so one of the big negatives we hear a lot about tall mounts is that people are concerned about their height over bore up close. And for sure, since these tall mounts are optimized for CQB type activities, you know, fighting in close quarters, having to see information, being able to get the gun out of your face and easily bring it up, you know, offset's a big part of the problem in those environments. The closer you get, the more you have to account for height over bore. So I did some math here, and we'll show you some different rifle setups that we measured. And if you look at a standard lower third co-witness, this is the low, like there's a couple standards for that. Some people do 1.7. This one I did was a 1.54, so it's the lowest lower third mount. And that gave me 2.9 inches from the center of the optic to the center of the bore. This one right here is 3.95 inches from the center of the optic to the center of the bore. And so what that means is if I have trained my whole life with a 1.54 mount, and somebody hands me this rifle and I have to go shoot it, and I don't change my offset, if I don't have the training to use the correct offset for this, I use the offset with a 1.54 mount, I will shoot 1 inch low, 1.05 inches to be exact. And so we use a 3 inch, you know, a 3 inch preferred area is at the head box or the chest, and if I shoot an inch low, I'll still be in that preferred area. Now, the best, of course, is to be in the center, and my point is not that you shouldn't train the specific offset of your optic, but people talk a lot about height over bore, and what I'm trying to illustrate is if you transition from a lower third co-witness to this ridiculously tall 2.75, which this is like a hybrid thing I made up myself, right? The difference is only an inch in offset. You only have to hold an inch higher to have center impacts, or if you hold the same holdover, you'll have inch low impacts. With a regular 2.26 mount, it's 3.6 inches, so only 0.7 inches different in offset. And so I don't think that this, you know, this giant offset concern that people have over height over bore, I just don't think it's a real problem. I also think that ultimately, no matter what you are using, you're going to have to go train that offset so that you're proficient with it at different distances on different size targets without just using, you know, a landmark like I always hold it at the top of the forehead. So I don't think that that's a real argument, but that lower third co-witness is about as low as it gets at 2.9 inches. And, you know, with magnified optic in a 205 mount with a piggyback red dot is 4.8 inches, you know. So the biggest difference in mechanical offset that you could even realistically look at is 1.9 inches. And yes, in a 3-inch circle, a 1.9 inch difference does put you outside of the circle. But I absolutely believe that that is very trainable for you. You know, you're only a 1/2 inch outside of the circle at 5 yards where offset is the biggest problem. And so I really think that people have blown this out of proportion, and whatever you build, you should train it. You should get used to offsets at different distances. You should shoot at different size targets so that it's not just a geographical location that you're going to put your dot on, but you actually know how high to hold because you've trained on different size targets at different distances. Hopefully this helps, gives you an idea. If you're looking for a starting point, as you know, you're getting your first rifle set up and you're going to put an optic on it for the first time, I think that if you are building a rifle 100% to just shoot on the range, you would probably be okay with a 1.93 that's a little bit taller than your lower third. It gives you a little bit more heads up position, but it gets you a little more into the rifle if it's just a rifle to shoot at the range. But I think the second you want to start working around gas masks, you're going to do force on force, you're going to be doing CQB, then I think that 226, the Unity 226 system, I think that's the lowest place I would start. For most people, that's going to be perfect. For me, I got a long neck, I'm a bigger guy. I'm messing around with taller stuff, and even this is probably not quite tall enough for me, so I can perfectly present, to perfectly present in this very heads-up posture, to present the dot right in front of my eye. This just isn't high enough. I have to dip into it. And so another 1/4 inch, which is 291 territory, would be perfect for me. So hopefully this helps as you think about optics considerations, as you have read all the comments on the internet about how terrible height over bore is and how impossible it's going to be to learn. I urge you to try it out. I think that you will really benefit from a more heads-up posture. It lets you see and take in the world. It lets you breathe. It gives you better peripheral vision. There's tests you can do, right? Like all of it's worth it. I think you should look at it. If you have any questions about optic mounts, height over bore, mechanical offset, any of that kind of stuff, shoot us an email at contact@Defense Mechanisms. Any other questions you got, send them. Please, we'd love to see you guys like, subscribe, share all of our social channels. We love talking to you guys on there. If you have any questions, about rifle setups, about training, questions about gear, or ideas for new gear, please message us. We'd love to hear from you. Hopefully this video helped you out, and I hope I see you on the next one.